All right. Hello and good morning, everyone. For those of you who are in the or on the west coast of California, I'm here with a dear friend and lover of mine, George Streeter. And George, what time is it where you are?
It is now 8 p.m. here in Germany, in Deutschland.
Thank you for being here with me today, George.
I'm just happy we're here on the same day. Sometimes we talk and you're in my yesterday.
Mhm. Yep, we're finding the flow in that though, or at least the understanding of how to communicate those days and times.
Mhm.
So welcome everyone for those of you who are in the Zoom room with us now, and for those of you who are tuning in live on Facebook. For those of you who have a desire to be more in on the intimate conversation, there is a Zoom link on my profile page that you can click to hop in here. And my desire and my intention today is to kind of pull back the veil of my own journey with sexuality and the very unique and rich sexual relationship that I have and had with this man uh, next to me, and why I feel like it's meaningful. Um, I feel really blessed to have had some deeply rich and connected sex in my life where um, I feel able to stay fully present in my body and feel myself deeply met and attuned to by the person, usually a man, across from me, and really able to advocate and open to my pleasure in really deep and beautiful and powerful ways. And experience a lot of healing and connection with men along the way. And my desire is for more people to have this type of experience, because I know as a woman and someone who works with women that it can be challenging to really open up and receive and feel embodied in sex. And my hope is that in this conversation that George and I are having today, that um, that feels more accessible, and that there's like a transmission energy element of what is possible in sex. And George, would you share a little bit about just who you are and what your desires and intentions are?
Yeah, so boy, who am I? That's a big open-ended question.
It really is.
Um, we've been lovers for many years now, and I still feel like we are lovers, even though I'm across the ocean right now. We've had times where we've been more present with each other and times where we've been less present with each other, but there's always remained this connection. And sort of my intention in this conversation is to support you, number one, but I also want women to understand that it's not a pipe dream to be met by a man fully, to have every part of your being, your sexual being, seen, appreciated, touched, uh, adhered to, nurtured, that all of those things are possible, and that it's not just something that happens to someone else, right? And there are things you did that helped me become who I am, you know, and we helped each other in that area, um, and so yeah, it's possible for everyone, and I want men to know that it has nothing to do with like um, it's not about. Um, I'll just say this: it's not where you think it is for a guy, and so you want to stay tuned to find out how you can be that kind of lover for your partner, um, and um, and it's not what you think it is. And so just stay tuned. It's hard to just put it in an intention, but my intention for the guys listening, is that the secret is not a secret, and I want to share it with you.
Mhm. I love that. Thank you. Uh, so just for kind of a flow for, so if y'all know what to expect over the next hour or so is uh, George and I are both going to kind of share a little bit about our journey leading up to our sexual connection. And towards the end of the call, and really just throughout the call, if there are questions that come up for you or curiosities or desires, especially if you're in the webinar Zoom platform, I invite you to write it in the chat. And at the end, there'll be time for you to, hop on the call and speak your questions. At the end of the call, I'll also share about an upcoming course for women that I have called Sovereignty, which much of this is about being able to remain embodied and present and open and receptive in our sex and able to communicate what we desire from a place of turn on and approval, and how powerful that can be in our sexual experiences, and also just how that translates into every area of life. So there's a lot of richness. And what I'd like to share is that uh, my sexual journey was very complicated in the beginning. When I started having sex, I was a late bloomer in college. I didn't have sex. I didn't even really kiss a guy or date until I got to college. And when I left the comfort of my own, childhood home and was kind of put into, living in a dorm with a college roommate, and all of a sudden there was the pressure to dress up and go out and want to be desired by men. And for me, beneath that want to be desired by men, there was a really deep desire to be chosen by a man, to have a partner, to be special and significant. And I wound up going about trying to get that desire fulfilled by jumping into bed very quickly with men. And often having a common theme of not being focused on my pleasure, not even really knowing what an orgasm felt like or if I could have one, and also feeling so much insecurity around not knowing what I wanted and not knowing how to ask for it, and the fear of being too much or too complicated, that I would often not communicate those things and just really become focused on the man and his experience, because I thought to myself, well, if he's having a good time, that means he's more likely to like me and love me and choose me. And what that wound up translating into was a lot of empty sex. And by empty sex, I mean not really feeling nourished afterwards, and actually feeling more kind of depleted and down on myself afterwards, because I didn't actually receive what it was that I thought I was wanting from the experience. And that was a lot of my life in my 20s, and dating and just being in relationships where I didn't feel safe to communicate my truth, and not having super fulfilling sex. And fast forward to 5 or 6 years ago, where I remember that I was sitting in my bed. I was living with a partner at the time, and I was sitting in our bed, and he was in the living room on the computer playing video games or something like that. And I remember thinking and feeling to myself that, I've had so many sexual experiences, but the amount of truly pleasurable sexual experiences where I have felt fully dropped into my body and able to connect with this person across from me, and ask for what I want and actually receive it, was very small. And that's really where my gateway into sexuality and really opening into what is possible began. And it was not too long after that that George and I met. So I'll pause there perhaps. And then, George, maybe you can share a bit of your own experience and story.
So, oh, my story is, um, uh, I was sexually active very young, Um, and I was lucky because a lot of my experiences were really good experiences with women who were more experienced than I was. But I got married, my first marriage, and I was married for 18 years. And so there's this 18-year span where there was nothing, and I was married as a really young man. So I get divorced 20 years later, and I'm free to explore. And the first thing I had to do was see a sex addiction coach. And I was with him for a whole year. And every week he would tell me, "You're not sex addicted. You're just a normal person." And I was like, "No, I'm having these desires, these desires." He's like, "Yeah, those are desires of every red-blooded American male. You are not a sex addict." And I was just convinced that I had these desires, and it's like I was scared of my desires. So I was afraid of them, and I didn't know how to follow them, and I didn't know what it meant if I did follow them. And so that's where my journey started, maybe just a few years before we met,
Mm.
maybe 3 years before we actually got in touch with each other, 4 years. And so my journey was just to learn that that all of the things that are inside of me I can bring to a beautiful woman like yourself, and not uh, damage or hurt that person or the relationship. And so that's where my journey began, and that's what I was learning.
Mm. Thank
And a lot of men are afraid of their own desires, and they feel like they're bad, like you can hurt people and you have to control your desires. And but I learned that's not true, you know
you. Mm.
that there's a place for all of it. And I think men want a place for all of who they are and all of their desires, in the same way that women want to be met in all of their desires. And but we keep missing each other. And so good, bravo that you're talking about this, you know
I think I mean, I know it's something that a lot of people are hungry for, and just to feel is
Mm,
possible, because if we don't, I feel grateful for my connection with you because it's set a precedent in my body of, a minimum of what I know is possible and what I will hold space for. Because what I find is that when we don't, this is something that I see with a lot of women, is that when we don't, or just people, is that when we haven't had an experience of anything other than something that is less than satisfying, while there can be part of us that longs for more, there can also be a part of us that fears that we're being, unreasonable or unrealistic in that desire for something greater. And then there can be all these fears and these self doubts and these guiltings of like, am I just being unreasonable? And
that's a good point, and that's one of the fantastic things about being your lover, especially in the beginning. So I had the desire issue, and along the way I was learning how to feel myself, feel others, and that it was okay to feel your emotions, because I did not want to feel.
mm,
And and the beautiful thing about you, especially in the beginning as you're expanding, right? Um, you were unafraid to go into spaces that felt a little uncomfortable
mm,
for you in the beginning, right? So, um, for example, if you were feeling less than worthy of who you are, right? If you were feeling insecure, like in you know how I can be. I'm like, well, let's just use that. Let's just play with that. And you would be willing to like sit there in that energy until it became comfortable, you know, and whatever. Uh, so you were able to like put yourself into a situation and go into discomfort, even in sex, not displeasure. I'm not talking about pain or discomfort. I'm talking about the emotional, like, I'm allowing this man to see me this way when really my ego wants me to be seen in a different way.
Mm.
And that gave me the opportunity to, like, um, touch those spots, right? Because you left them bare for me to do that. And that was a blessing for me. And I'm happy to hear that, that felt good for you.
Well, I really appreciate that reflection, and I appreciate the reminders and the examples because we've, been lovers for close to 5 years, so it's wonderful to be reminded. And when you say that, I was willing to be in those insecure or, emotionally or even physically, emotional discomfort is also a physical discomfort and just uncomfortable sensation in the body. And
Right.
one of the gifts that I feel like I received from you is I feel like when I came into our relationship, I had a lot of story rooted in past experience that anything that was other than like total easy go with the flow was too much for men and was
Mm,
just unacceptable. And one of my biggest wounds earlier on around sexuality is that me taking up space just means the man's going to get annoyed, bored, and leave. Which,
oh, wow.
in
Yeah.
retrospect, like, no wonder I struggled with, experiencing orgasm, because if I'm up in my head, worrying that I'm taking too long or that how I'm feeling isn't okay, how can my body possibly soften into orgasm? And
Mm,
the way that you showed up with me was just like, I found through our relationship, and I want to share a little bit about the context of our relationship because it's super unique in a variety of ways. It was just the way you showed up was just like you didn't show up with any expectation. It's like you would come to my home and just be genuinely curious about the location I was in, whether it was like total ravenous turn on or like sweet and soft and like sensual or just like fucked up.
yeah. Yeah.
We could find turn on in any of those
That was the excitement about you. I never knew what was you opened the door. I never knew what was going to happen or who was going to greet me.
I love that.
And that made it really exciting.
So
And you know what? Uh, the story with men is that they think they want sweet and docile. That's what they think they want
mm,
until they get it. And then when they have that, that's when they, like, start to have an affair, right? Because they actually want all the fire and all the nuance and all of the excitement of change in the full spectrum of emotions, and just allowing that to happen. And so I was grateful that, like, you gave me this Rolodex of emotions and that I could, like, play in.
mm, thank you. Yeah, what you just said, it makes me think of a conversation that we had a few weeks ago when you started to talk about having this conversation of me telling you how I perceive myself to have a strong masculine energy. And I believe that I have a strong feminine energy as well. But I remember
You
telling
used to tell
you,
me that.
I was like, I feel like I'm scaring men with my assertive masculine energy. And you told me like your experience, it was something different. Can you share with me? Because it was potent.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can share that same exact thing, but I have never, like, you have told me that before. I remember when you told me, and I just looked at you and hopefully with love that, like, no, you're a total feminine. I feel you as completely feminine, and it's strong feminine, right? Um, you're petite and but in bed, you're very large to me because your sexual energy is large, you know, and and some sometimes when we're together with our clothes on, right, and we hug, and I'm like, oh wow, she's small, you know, but it doesn't feel that way when you're vertical because your energy is so big and because you're so present,
Mm.
right? So maybe that is what you're mistaking for masculine,
Mm.
just your sexual presence, because you are completely feminine to me, and I've always felt you as uh, uniquely feminine, like um, in all of the good ways and all of the bad ways, because guys like both the good and the bad of femininity. They
Mm.
just don't like to admit it. I know I never like to admit it, you know.
Well, I think it's a really potent thing to admit, because I'll talk to girlfriends and people say it's like, you know, I feel like a lot of women can get into the thing of like, oh, I don't want to be too difficult. Oh, I don't want to be too needy. So we compromise and adapt ourselves all these ways to not be super complicated. And then, the guy will wind up going off and choosing someone who's way.
Super complicated. Exactly.
What do you think that is though? Like, I mean, I have my own idea about what that is, but what is it in like the deeper sense that a man is like actually wanting when, because you're saying on a conscious level, they want someone who's docile. So what do you think the deeper thing is that a man actually wants a woman who's not gonna, pacify herself?
Yeah, I think on the deeper level, what men are seeking is this rich interior life, right? And so, um, because we don't form the same, we don't see connection the same way, I think it was explained that women have like a web of connections. They can see all of the consequences of actions in this web of connections to people. And we just see consequences as results, or, like, what's the result? And sometimes we forget the people that are in the web of that result, right?
Mm.
You can tell that by just looking at the world around us, right? Um, and so, what a woman like yourself and women who have um, a rich interior life, and what I mean by a rich interior life is one um, that's volatile. I mean, it's rich because you feel everything, and on sometimes on the surface it looks like volatility, but that is what guys desire. Now, we feel initially like we can't handle it, and so we're afraid of it.
Well, and that's to me what you're talking about, like the emotional volatility, like the bigness of the emotions and the into like the feelings that exist inside. And what I find is that often, I know for myself, and this is what I've seen as a pattern, is that because there's almost this thing in us that intuits that a man is not gonna be able to handle it or is going to be blown out by it. I know for myself, when I was younger, I wound up cultivating a lot of internal self doubt because I would
Mm,
feel these things powerfully. And then I would bring them into my external life, with men, and it would wind up just being this really painful thing to bring my truth. So I wound up just, dulling it down and starting to doubt it because it didn't produce the greatest results.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I get that. And a lot of women listening may be doing that same exact thing, right? And um, there is a way to get through to the guy, and it can, and I think you were able to do that through your sex. And the thing that you just talked about and that you did with me was that you kept your focus interior on yourself. Like, you stopped that whole I need to look out for his experience thing, you know. And of course we made a pact to do that, right? And I would encourage other women and men who are watching this to do that with your lovers or with your partner or with your wife, right? That we're both going to, like, try to get to that spot where there's the most juice, the most feeling, even if it's flowing into areas that we don't really want to face. And that's what I meant about your courage. You were able to do that, and we would just go to, like, if you were having a bad week or a bad day, and then we would just go into that instead of trying to reorient everything and then be somewhere that we weren't, you
Yeah.
know. And I was willing to go there because I was interested in the sensation, and you were willing to go there because I don't know, maybe you can speak to why you were willing to go there.
Yeah, well, this is where I'd love to go into, I think two pieces for me that are unique about our relationship that to me um, gave such a powerful blueprint of what is possible in relationship. And the first that I'll speak to, and we can go into both, is one that we started cultivating our intimate, sexual relationship through the practice of orgasmic meditation. So for those who
Yeah.
aren't familiar with orgasmic meditation, it's a 15-minute meditative practice. It's not a romantic relationship or anything like that, but it's a meditative practice where a woman will undress from the waist down. And then her partner, and this isn't a romantic partner, it could potentially even be someone that she doesn't know, but it's within a community of people that have been trained in this practice. And then her partner will sit to one side of her, and for a 15-minute time container, will stroke her clitoris gently, intentionally, without attachment to outcome, without trying to climax, without anything other than just being present with the sensations that arise within the body. And for me, this practice was so incredibly powerful because it allowed me as a woman to be in a very clear 15-minute time container where I knew, the steps of everything that was going to happen before I got in. So my nervous system could relax. I knew that the person who was stroking me was not trying to get me to climax, and that there wasn't, it wasn't good if I came, it wasn't bad if I came. So I got to release agenda. The practice encouraged me to stay present more than anything to the point of contact, the sensations within my body. And it encouraged me to make adjustments. And by adjustments, I mean value neutral, simple requests of, can you move a little bit to the left? Can you do a little softer stroke? Can you do like a little like thicker and meatier and a little more butter in there? It was like, and there was this very clear agreement that it's not a commerce-based practice, meaning that after I receive, I'm not going to go and just do the same for whoever's stroking me. And it was a container that allowed for me to release a lot of the conditions of how I kind of created in my mind that we're putting all this pressure and expectation on me to perform in my sex, to let the guy know that he's doing a good job by making extra sound. And it just let me release all that. And to me, George, that's how we really started our intimacy.
Mm. Yeah, and I can see, yeah, that practice obviously was very good for me as well, because it allowed me to feel. I could get a better understanding of your orgasmic peaks and valleys, and what to do and how to touch you in those, in each spot. So, and as a guy, if you do that if you have that practice with multiple women, then you learn the orgasm of different types of women, and all of that can help,
Yeah. So that was
help you with
one.
attention.
Sorry about that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, so that was one super rich aspect of it. And I could really feel I could really feel how much you could feel my bodily experience. Like the
Mm-hmm.
way that you would describe what you felt in my body, not just after ohms, but after our sexual experiences. It was just
Yeah.
like such a like wow, it's like you would describe to me just through feeling my body and my orgasm experiences that I was having earlier that day and like throughout the week, that it was just um it was uncanny to me. Um
Mhm.
and the other piece that I want to weave in as something that was really powerful for me in our relationship is that, you're currently married, you're in a polyamorous relationship, and throughout the entirety of our intimate relationship in any form, you were always in a polyamorous, relationship or marriage. And
Yeah.
what was really powerful about that for me was that, for whatever reason, like whatever perfect, set of circumstances, there was no part of me that was pulling for you to be anything other than exactly what you were and what we had both agreed upon within the container of our sexual relationship. We didn't even really go out on dates for the most part. I think we maybe went out to dinner like twice, but for the most part, it was you coming over to my place of residence and bringing me pleasure in some
Yeah.
way. And, part of the thing,
One of our biggest date nights was was with my partner.
oh yeah, when we all went to that concert together.
We went to a concert.
Oh goodness. Like the point that I want to convey here to women is that part of what I believe allowed me to show up so authentic and so present with you was that there was no part of me that had an underlying agenda of trying to turn you into my life partner, my romantic partner. And what I really got to see is that, in other past relationships with men, when there was a part of me who was considering, like, oh, maybe this is the one, like maybe this is going to be the guy, it would actually alter the way that I showed up and have me be less authentic.
Mm,
And you were saying how like I was really just centered in myself and my own experience, that because with other relationships where the guy was potentially available, I was less centered in my own experience and more kind of thinking of, who do I need to be? Who do I believe I need to be in order to get this man to choose me?
yeah, and men definitely want you to be centered in your own experience. And guys, if you're thinking you don't want that, let me tell you, you do want that. You do want that because if that is where you really get into understanding. If you want to have confidence, then that's the spot you want to be in, where she's centered in herself, because now you get the real authentic feeling of who she is, what she wants, what she desires, and you can see and hear um, how to be the lover she wants. You know, so it helped you to be centered, but it helped me to be able to feel you more from that space.
Yeah. Well, and what I keep hearing us like kind of touching into is it's kind of this question of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? Because
Right.
I'm hearing it's like, Arielle, you being this way is what helped me to be this way. And then it's like, and George, like you being this way helped me to be this way. And,
Mhm.
it's like one of the things that I loved about, and just so appreciated about our relationship is that it was just centered in truth.
Yeah.
And it was centered in, there would be times in our relationship where we saw each other maybe 2 to 3 times a month. Maybe there were some times where we saw each other like 4 times a month. And then there were some times when we didn't even see each other for months.
Right.
And, one of the powerful things for both of us is it's just, I never felt like there was a resentment
Mhm.
or an expectation or an attachment that because we've had this experience in this way up until this point, it means that it needs to continue to be this way, in this form. Like it just felt like that wasn't there.
Yes, and that was rare and special because that doesn't happen all the time. People get attached to the form of things,
Yeah.
and I've had that experience where I've had to say, okay, the form is changing, and so we have to change what we're doing. And people, and I've lost some of those relationships. Those people did not accept the change. I can remember sometimes though where certainly I've had to say, okay, I need some time. I need to pull back. I got to take care of my relationship. I won't be able to see you as often. But there were also some times where you were like, and we could have been oming and in that spot of like, oh yeah, I really desire you. Oh yeah, I really desire you too. And there's this guy that I'm sort of interested in. And I don't want to do anything until I get clear over here.
Mhm.
And I would just be like, okay, that's beautiful. I'm glad you have someone that you're interested in. And we would just hold that desire for each other, you know?
Yeah. And it's so gorgeous. When I wrote down, I was like, oh, what are the things that I want to touch on? And one of the things that I felt was so magical, about our relationship is that it was both a non-committed relationship and yet simultaneously a very securely attached relationship. Like when I reflect on it,
Yeah.
which is so unique, which is what part of why our relationship has been so mind-boggling to me, because you were always with another woman when you were
Mhm.
always in a committed partnership with another woman when we were dating, and or in a sexual relationship, and I never experienced insecurity.
Mm.
And I never experienced, like, if I desired you, there was no part of me that was like, is it going to be too much if I reach out to him? Like, just be like, I desire you. Can you come over?
Yeah, yeah,
And it's, in that navigation. And I know that when I have conversations with women, a lot of women are holding space to invite in partners into our lives, whatever that
mhm,
means for each individual woman. And I know that in my own navigation process of holding space for this man to come in, there's been this discernment process around, if I'm holding space for this man, like how many, like, do I want different people coming in and out of my energetic
right.
sexual space? And it's like, it to me, it's constantly evolving. But one of the reasons that I feel like, regardless of circumstance, that you always felt like someone who could be in my life was because of the clarity of our boundaries with each other, and the
Mhm.
clarity and integrity and alignment of our desires. Like
Yeah,
there was nothing. I feel like in so many relationships we can feel like there are things that are being felt but not said, and
exactly.
we just don't speak them because it's uncomfortable, because we're afraid of the answer. And
Mhm,
that winds up being a huge energy drain. And I just never felt that energy drain with you.
mhm. Uh, you started a practice. You started it, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, saying, "I love you." And
Mm.
at first, I was really like, "Oh my God, don't say that. How could you say that? We're not in it. What am I supposed to do with that?" And you kept telling me, "You don't have to do anything with that. That's just it's like I just love you as an individual, as you as a being, and I need to say that, and I want to say it, and you don't have to do anything with that." And then eventually, I could say, "Yeah, I love you," you know, and have it just be that, you know, and not that it needs to go anywhere, do anything, become anything, flow into some sort of relationship, you know, um, other than the relationship we had, you know. And uh, so that is also a courageous thing, right? To be willing to be in that space and to have that part of yourself open to that level of care for another human being, that you're not possessing.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, I really feel like my love for you kind of snuck up on me also, because because this idea that love looks a certain way, and based upon a person's availability in a certain way, and saying I love you is a big deal, and then it's just like, especially when I moved into my new place and like you were coming over more consistently, it's just like, I I just really love and appreciate this human being, like, a lot. And it's just so nice and such a gift that I get to have this person in my life who gets to nourish me in this way. Like, what a cool thing. And
Yeah,
I wanna speak more kind of a bit about the pleasure element of our connection, because
I like
there's
that.
just so much pleasure in our sex. I mean,
I think that was the one thing we definitely agreed on. that that it's like, okay, you we'll go that direction. Do you think it'll be pleasurable? Yeah, I think so. Okay, let's do it. you know.
I mean, I just feel so grateful that I got to exist in, a sexual lovership with a person where, regardless of what happened, the one of the things that I loved was that, again, like, releasing these old experiences of feeling like if a man doesn't get off, he doesn't want to be there. If a man doesn't come, he doesn't want to be there. And one of the things that was so beautiful about our connection is that, just to clarify, people, it was literally our relationship 99% of the times that George would come over to my home for 2 to 3 hours. There would be some form of pleasurable sexual activity. We would hang out in bed for a bit afterwards and talk about like the different layers of the sexual pleasurable activity. And then he'd take a shower and he'd leave. And it was
Yeah.
hilarious. And what I loved and was just so healing about our relationship was that sometimes you would come over, George, and your your cock would not even be, touched physically, or be like physical. I mean, your cock was obviously always involved on an energetic, sensory level, but sometimes I wouldn't, like, your pants wouldn't even come off. And
Oh,
it would
yeah.
purely be like you would be going down on me, or just like whatever it would be. And I remember it took me a while to actually believe that you were being genuinely fulfilled
Mm,
and nourished simply through giving me pleasure, and
mm,
that you didn't actually need anything more in that moment, and then that was enough. Like, that was
yeah.
actually a truly revolutionary thing for me.
I don't know what to say to that. Yeah, just sometimes that's it's it's a rare thing. So I'm a coach as well, and some of you may not know that. I work with couples, and I teach a sexual communication course. And in that, I work with women who are married and monogamous, and some who are not non-monogamous, but receiving is such a struggle, and I give out the homework of like, you need to make 3 or 4 sexual requests a week, and or a day even. And people pop out. They're on their emails. George, I'm struggling with this, or I'm having a fight with my husband now because it's so difficult. And you were so gracious in your ability to expand and to keep expanding there. And men want to give. It's just that we've been trained that we need to get, because that's what being manly is. But deep down, what our truest desire is to give. And a lot of women push it away. And I could, like, you would get to your threshold and then you would just push past it. You would just surrender to it. And
into
I remember slowing down sometimes if I was going down on you for a while.
it. Wow.
And you would be like, okay, hold on, I need to surrender. Like you just would let go, you know,
Yeah.
and then that would just suck me into your orgasm. And then from there it was, it was just a dance, you know.
I remember those moments. I remember those moments where you would go down on me and there would be a little conditioning in me that felt like I'm almost completely letting go, but I'm not allowed to completely let go because that means there would be no part of me that's tracking him, making sure that he's okay, making sure that he's having a good time, or getting bored or whatever it was. And it was it sounds like such a minor thing, but when I extend that feeling of vigilance in sex of like I cannot the story that I cannot fully let go because it's not safe for me to just let go of handling and tracking everything, and then extend that out into the way that I engage and surrender and receive in life,
Hmm.
in every
Oh wow.
in work, in
Yeah.
money, and allow for my feminine to trust. Like to me, that's why sex is such a powerful practice and microcosm for life, is it's like through having a partner that I trusted. Because part of the reason that I was able to really soften is because I felt you attuned and connected to me. And that even when your beast out. Like even when you're intense, like I am going to fuck you is out. That
Bless.
that it wasn't at the expense of connection and attunement to my body,
Hmm. Hmm.
which to me is a big thing that I see women, struggling with, is the fear that if I fully surrender into pleasure and receiving an orgasm, that I'll be unsafe, that I'm not
Right.
protected. So having partners, especially male partners in our life, and this is something that when I talk to women, there's this common thread that they'll say, the man will reach a threshold where he'll get so into kind of like the pursuit of sensation that it'll go at the expense of connection to her body, and then that can
Right.
feel unsafe. So anyway, go ahead.
And for guys who are trying to wonder, like, what is she talking about? Like at the expense of connection. Uh, you've seen porn, and that's usually what's happening. It's not connected. Uh, they've gone past the connection point to get to sensation, and that's what it looks like and feels like,
Yeah.
right? Um, Staying connected is sometimes even at the height of the sensation of it, being able to say, whoa, okay, wait, I don't feel you anymore, and so we're going to stop here and slow down.
Yeah.
And I've said that, right? You've
You said that. You said, I remember that was, so I had my first threesome with George about maybe like a couple of months ago. And am I allowed to share that? I just shared that. Is that okay?
you just shared it.
And
I'll drink to that.
and I remember there is a moment where, it was with two men and then me. And I was reaching this threshold where I myself, it's like there was so much sensation and energy in my body that like I was starting to go into, overdrive, or just kind of, just riding to ride. And I remember that you even invited me to slow down. Like you could
Mhm.
actually feel in my body that I was, hitting a bit of an, sensation overwhelm, and that
Yeah.
I was checking a little bit out to pursue, like in the pursuit of sensation as a way to kind of bypass the sensation, like bypass
Mm.
the intensity. And you just invited me to slow down. And I mean, to me, that is just a sign of such a tuned in and trustworthy lover. Like what a gift that, you know, ideally I'm tuning in with my body and like taking care of myself. And you know, what a gift to also have a man in my life who's tuning into me in that way and really wants me to be present in my body and doesn't want to go further if I'm not really in myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the guys listening, I mean, just think about it this way. You can go fast alone and you can go far together, right? So you can get to your goal really fast if you just bypass all the cautions and not be in attunement to your partner. You'll get to a goal really quick, but you will have a longer experience and that feeling of like being a man if you stay connected. And that's where the real manliness is, like just slowing down to stay with your partner. um, Sometimes it means speeding up. It's not always about slowing down. Sometimes it's about bringing it, you know. I've had that too, where I've walked in and been kind of tired, and you know, you're purring like a big cat, and and I have to show up, you know, like get out of my head and be present.
I love it. I also want to invite as we're starting to get to the hour. I think we'll go, you know, potentially in for another half hour or so. And George and I are just going to keep, you know, weaving and sharing in here. And for those of you who are in the webinar, I also posted a Zoom link to join the webinar where this is broadcasting in the comments of the Facebook Live. So if you have questions, if you want to bring your voice in, you don't have to be live on video. You can just bring your voice in, or you can even type it in the chat box. We'd love to, you know, respond to any questions that are coming up for you about your life and your intimacy. And again,
Oh
just
yeah, that would
it
be.
is broadcasting live to Facebook. So if you'd prefer to stay anonymous, you can just keep your video off and just raise your hand on the right hand side. You can just raise your hand or type in the chat box, and we'd love to receive your voice here. And in the meantime, we're just going to keep talking about things.
Okay.
Um, yeah, George, I remember, you know, as we were dropping into deeper and deeper intimacy to me leading up to when now George and his wife and his little girl live in Germany right now, and they moved in July of this year. um Leading up to that, it's like we were just I felt like we were kind of really dropping into just more intimacy and authenticity with each other. And one of the things that I noticed is that I felt this desire to know more of your desires. Like I remember asking you, it's like, hey, because he would always just show up and like just feel into what was going on in my body and just be like, I swear to God, George, I mean, I call him this in bed, I'll call you it now. You're a sexual shaman. Like the way that you're able to read energy and be able to describe what's going on inside of like my experience without talking about it at all is profound. And I remember expressing to you, like, hey, I'd love to know more of your desires. You know, what do you want to bring into the space? And like, what would you like to experience? And your response stuck with me because you said that, you know, what I've always learned is that when I just follow a woman's desire, that I'm always nourished in the process. And that was just a really meaningful statement to me.
Yeah, no, it's true. Um, like, and it's the difference between like eating and becoming full, and then eating and feeling like your whole body is, um, you know, vibrating at this. It feels like a zing in your body, like you just ate and zing. You have all this energy, like you had all the vitamins and nutrients you need, and your body is happy, right? And that's what it feels like following your orgasm. You know, like places get touched and things happen that I didn't even know was dry. you know.
And to me, that was also the gift of knowing that there wasn't an agenda for you, meaning that I really, and it took time, just for
It
clarity
took
for
some time, yeah.
everyone, like it wasn't like, George and I, we got together a few times and all of a sudden I totally trusted him. And I just
Mhm.
really, like, to me it was, you can say things, but to me, trust is cultivated through how a person shows up and embodies and acts, consistently over time. And, I've had distrust of men in the past. I haven't trusted in the past. So it really took a while for and this is beyond my conscious mind relaxing and trusting him. This is actually about my body having enough consistency of trust and feeling cared for and seen and attuned to, that there were places that could open up within me that I just don't think would be available when my body is more in a state of it's not safe to open. Like,
Mhm.
that's the beautiful thing about sex that I've found, is that the more trust that I have in my body, the more trust that I have in the feelings and the sensations that arise within me, and the more permission that I have for those feelings, and knowing that as a woman, that, bringing that into a sexual space with a man is healing. It's medicine. It's like the sacred ingredient that is needed for, like, the total alchemy of, sex magic and all of those gorgeous things.
Yeah.
And the more that I soften into that and know that George isn't trying to get anywhere, like, likely he's going to enjoy the experience. Likely we're both going to be happy at the end. And when I can let go of trying to get anywhere and just be really curious, these magical pockets would open up. And I just remember sometime being with you and just being like, what just happened? Where
Where do we
did
go?
it go?
Yeah, no, that's happened a lot.
Mhm.
Um, Two things when you were saying that, I was thinking, um, it's a leap of faith, you know. I mean, there is trust, right? But we were mapping out territory that neither one of us knew,
Mhm.
right? And so there's two good things. Like, once you get to a certain territory in your sexual being, in your sexual map, in your body, in your vagina, in your pussy, whatever you want to call it, right? When you get to that spot, you always know how to get back to it.
Mm.
And then from there, you can venture out into a new uncharted territory, right? And then, you're going further and further out, and you come back, and then you go further, you go in a different direction the next time. And the beauty of it was, like I said, how much courage you had to go to those places. Um, and here's the thing that women and men should both take away from this, is that it wasn't like you were consciously thinking, this is what I want to do. You were listening to your body in the same way I was listening to your body. And your orgasm was telling, uh, the woman's orgasm, your orgasm, was so nurturing. Like, when you allow it to lead, it will feed both people,
Yeah.
right? So we're both listening and going, and you're getting nurtured, and I'm getting nurtured, because we're both following this thing, um, and you don't have a full understanding of where it's going and what it is. You're mapping it out, right? And neither do I. And so we're on the journey together, and that's the connected part,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, that's beautiful. To me, like, that's true surrender. To me,
Mm-hmm.
that's surrendering to, connection with God in a way.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
and I feel like the one of the key pieces that I want to kind of culminate here that I've been discovering through my own sex and through my work with women, and as you know, a major blueprint that I'm going to be bringing into the sovereignty container, is that I believe that, you know, all genders, and in this context, men and women, we have certain rites of passage that we each get to go through. There are certain initiations that we are called into to more fully embody who we are, embody our truth, embody our potency. And, you know, just as there, you know, there are men's circles and there are women's circles for men to be initiated by men and women to be initiated by other women. Um, for the women on this call, I believe there are certain initiations that only women can perform for men. That there are
Mhm.
certain ways that men are calling, and like their soul is calling to be initiated at the altar of a woman's body. And what I mean by this is that when we're in a sexual experience between a man and a woman, there is so much what I perceive as shame that exists in men around, you know, wanting to show up sexually and the fear of not being able to, you know, show up or perform well with women. And, you know, for women, there is this an intense desire to be able to show men and to be able to guide men into this is how my body can open into pleasure. But what I notice is that, you know, there are so many women who are aware of this shame and this fear of inadequacy in men that we as women will shut down our own bodies, shut down our own truth, and shut down our own intuition to avoid, you know, speaking a truth that we might be attacked by, or the fear of listening to the intuition in our body for fear that if we bring that feminine intuition into the world, that it's going to cause our men to shut down, that it's going to cause our men to abandon us, that it's going to cause us to lose love, and that it's not safe to be in that feminine truth. And what I believe we as women are being called into is an initiation of being willing to know and trust the truth that lives within our bodies, and to be willing to speak it into the world, whether it's in our intimate relationships, you know, with men and sexuality, or regardless of sexual partner, or speaking to a whole bunch of really fucked up things we see going on in the world right now that is not connected to heart and not connected to truth. And my intention for this sovereignty container is really looking at how we as women can change our blueprints around how we embody and express truth in our lives, in our intimate relationships, and in our sex, through how we are willing to trust and really know our bodies. And the sovereignty container is many things, but one of them is for women who have a desire to more fully embody their truth and their pleasure in sex and allow that to ripple out into every area of life.
Yeah, and even how that can help transform yourself and others.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. We both, I mean, to me, that feels like the thing that we've been circling with George, is that me being more of myself is not only liberating for me, but it also provides a key piece for you to access and bring more of yourself forward, which creates a space where I
Yeah,
feel more safe to access and bring more of myself forward because we're creating a space of truth and presence together.
going back to that altar analogy, like, um, and then what is an altar, right? An altar is a medium between um, the person on one side of the altar and the higher power God. What do you always say? The woman God? No, what?
Goddess?
Goddess, the goddess, right? Um,
Woman God.
on the other side of that altar, right? So a woman's body is this from the altar analogy, is this medium in which we as men can get connected to a higher form of pleasure, intelligence, being, knowing, and bring that back into our own lives
Yeah.
and into the world around us. That's the healing part of it.
Yeah, that's I won't go into the story of it now, but if you've for those of you who are interested in Mary Magdalene and a different perspective on the relationship between her and Jesus, there's a very similar, description of the a woman's body as an altar for connection to the divine in that way. Mm.
Yeah.
This is beautiful, George. I'm not seeing any questions arising. Perhaps we've satiated people. I'm curious if there's, I definitely would love for you to share in the comments of the video, a link to your work if people are wanting to learn more about you. And I'm
Oh
just
yeah,
curious if there's anything that,
absolutely.
are there any other pieces that you want to weave in?
Any other pieces that I want to be in, weave in? Uh, I know that it's all possible. Like there's not a person that's listening right now who can't get to the level of presence that you embody and the level of um, sexual pleasure that we were able to reach together. There's not a man out there who can't have the same attunement that I had with you. It's all possible for everyone that's listening, right? If you're curious about this and you're here, then you are miles ahead of people who have no awareness that they even need this type of thing and that they even desire it or want it. So it is more than possible. And it just takes a little courage, and it takes taking some first steps. Like there were things that we both did outside of our connection together before we even came together that allowed our lovemaking, our sex to be so nourishing for us. And so your course is one of those things that people can do that will help them later in the bedroom. So yeah.
Thank you, love. And for those who are interested in sovereignty, enrollment closes tomorrow, Saturday, October 10th at 11:59 Pacific Daylight Time. And you're welcome to reach out to me with any questions y'all might have. George, this just,
Corey just said something, so I'll thank you, Corey.
I don't have a question now. Just wanted to share how deeply touched and moved I have felt by this whole experience. Thank you, love. Thank you for being here. George, this is really lovely.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
really lovely. Thank you so much for playing with me.
Mm, thank you.
You're welcome.
I love it.
Yeah.
And thank you all for watching.
All right, love. Well, that feels complete for now.
Yeah, you have a good rest of your day, and I'll say good night. So, guten Abend, as they say here.
Thank you. Good Yontif. Happy Friday, everyone.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.